Okay. So you know how when you work all day, like all you want to do is go home and put on your pajamas? Well, that's what Krystal and I have. We've had patients all day. So we're in the US and it's nighttime for us. So Krystal texted me and she was like, I just want to put on my pajamas. I'm so tired. And I was like, let's do it because we have a podcast. We can do whatever we want. So we're in our pajamas. Hold on. I'm going to show you my amazing socks that my boyfriend hates, but I love. And then Nat is in Australia. So it's the morning for her. So she's also in her pajamas. So we're having a pajama party today. So anyway.
Welcome to the Health Babes podcast, Nat.
Thank you so much for having me in all my glory.
Your beautiful glory.
That's the best thing. You can come however you want here. So
yes, exactly.
I love it. I love it.
All right. So Krystal, why don't you introduce Nat and then we'll get into what we're going to go over today with Nat.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nat Kringoudis is a 2-time best-selling author, 2-time podcast host, and all-around women's health and natural fertility practitioner. She's founded Melbourne's home of natural health clinic, the Pagoda Tree, where she has helped over 20,000 women rescue her hormones and reclaim their best life. You may even know her from the old online TV series Health Talks or her latest book, Beautiful You. If you feel like there has to be another way, there is. She's here to provide you with another option. Nat believes there isn't just one way and is on a mission to educate and empower women just like you, so you can get clued up on your body and take control of your hormone health. Well, welcome to the Health Babes podcast, Nat. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Sorry, I have to keep muting myself because there's like a tram cart that keeps on going past at a high-pitched screaming sound.
I feel like all the dogs are out at my house right now, so I feel you on that.
Nat, can we see your slippers?
You want to see my slippers?
Yeah. You said you were wearing your slippers. Okay. I want to see them. Thank you.
They're fluffy. They're excellent.
Those are definitely
But they could also double as shoes. Yeah. Apparently, in Australia anyway.
So why don't we dive in, Nat, and let's talk about why is understanding your cycle your superpower?
Oh, yeah. You know, we've all kind of blamed it on our hormones, right? Or someone else has blamed it on our hormones for us, whether it's our other half or someone close to us or our mum. Our mum loves to do that one, like, you're a bit hormonal, honey. And, you know, we love to blame it on that. But what does that even mean? And if you don't understand your body as a woman, then it's easy to blame it on your hormones. Sounds good. You know, it's an excuse, it's a reason, but very rarely do we actually explore or understand what that really means. And so, you know, empowering women to understand their body is so important, but we're so disconnected, especially because we're busy. We might have used birth control. We might not even understand our cycle. And if you can know the ebbs and flows of your cycle, there's so much wisdom around that. You can bring in not only awareness, because I think it first starts with being aware. At what point of my cycle do I feel good? Do I feel not so good? Do I feel tired? And start to look at if there's patterns. Is it cyclic? Are these symptoms that you're experiencing, are they cyclic? Do they happen at the same time every month? And when you have that wisdom, A, you can be a little bit more forgiving of when you do see them, but B, you can get really curious as to what they might be. If there's a headache at the same time every time at the same time of your cycle, what is that telling you? Or perhaps you can go a little bit more gently on those days, and you can really learn to use it as something that becomes a bit of a life hack, because you can choose to prioritize on the days that you know you're not going to be at your best, but also the days that you know you can perform. Then if you're smart enough to schedule things in on those days, or at least know that those really creative days are coming, we can talk more about the actual phases, then you can absolutely use that as a hack.
So why don't you talk to us about what are the different phases of the cycle?
Yeah, sure. I think all of us appreciate the menstrual phase. We know that there's the phase where we menstruate. And I mean, what was that? Sorry?
I said hallelujah when that day comes, right?
Yes. Well, it depends, because some women are like, oh my goodness, that's the worst day of my cycle. It's when I have pain. And let's just put it out there. Symptoms that are terrible are not normal. They're just accepted as common, especially as women. I never forget, my mum would say to me, it just sucks to be a woman sometimes. Yeah. And, you know, again, if you know your cycle and you can understand the ebbs and flows, it doesn't suck to be a woman. It's actually, there's many benefits to being a woman, but we can be a bit kinder on ourselves and recognize that symptoms are clues. So, you know, the menstrual phase is generally, women bleed anywhere from 3 to 7 days, sometimes longer and sometimes shorter. And again, that's telling you something about your hormones. If it's too short or too long, maybe you've got not enough or too much of various essential hormones like estrogen. Then we move into the follicular phase where your body is getting ready to ovulate. And so I always joke and say our bodies are pretty much always working towards getting us pregnant or preparing for us to get pregnant in any moment, which don't shoot the messenger. It's just the nature of what's going on. So moving into the follicular phase, it's given its name because this is when there's several dominant follicles on an ovary that's maturing in preparation for ovulation. And we generally should feel really good at this time. This is where we move into our more creative and, you know, great time to start projects, to really get things done. We get also, as we move into ovulation, we get a surge of testosterone, which is, you know, it does step us more into that doing role. It's that role where, or that phase where we, again, get stuff done and execute the plan. And that's typically around ovulation is our best time to do that. Again, also with the in line of trying to get us pregnant, we're more social at this time. We want to go out and meet people. We want to go out and potentially procreate, you know, depending on where you're at and what, you know, who you are and what you're doing. But that's typically what our body wants us to go and do at that time. It's so funny when you look at the facts of different things that happen at ovulation time. If you follow me along on Instagram, I always share fun facts, but our voice goes higher, for example, when we're ovulating, because we're cuter when our voice is high. We attract we attract the people
I love that. I did see that on your Instagram. I did when you said that.
It's so funny. Isn't that hilarious? So just these little facts. And, you know, there's lots of theories around how we attract potential partners, just by the sheer nature of what we're putting out into the world, but also what our bodies are doing, what our pheromones are doing. And I know that that's a great subject. It's research. Some say yes, some say no. Makes sense to me that, you know, you're attracting the right partner at that time. And then when we come out of the ovulation phase, we head back into the luteal phase. So one of two things is either going to happen in the luteal phase. You've either timed sex for conception, or maybe you've timed it and not actually wanted a baby, but that's what happens. And that embryo then prepares to implant into the lining, and that's a pregnancy. Or we get ready to repeat the process of shedding the lining and then arriving back in the menstrual or period phase again. And it's really normal as we come back down that hill to start to want to go inward a little bit. It's a time to close off projects. It's a time for a little bit more R&R, a little bit more rest. And if we know these things about ourselves, we can prepare for them. But also if we know, like I said, that there's certain things that show up for us at these phases, we can actually look at the clues that our body's telling us as to what else might be going on. And, you know, it's not complex. At the same time, it is really complex. And so how do we as just general people understand our cycles better? And it doesn't also mean that you feel like those things that I've explained. That is how typically we should. In a perfect world, that's how things should play out for us, but we don't necessarily live in a perfect world. So a lot of women will say, I feel really nauseous at ovulation time, or I don't feel great at ovulation time, or my best day, like you just said, is the first day of my period. I love that day. So it is really tuning in, and we are all different, and that's okay. But if symptoms are really loud, then it really is a prompt to be able to utilize that as a clue and do something.
Yeah. How can we use our cycles to our advantage more? Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Well, you know, like I've just said, if you know these things, I think, and especially this idea of ovulation being this time where you are expansive, you are going to present really well. It's the day that you look in the mirror. We all do this. And we're like, I look good today. Like I actually look good today. Look at me. And then I don't know about you, but I definitely get a day before my period's due. And I look in the mirror, I'm like, you're about to get your period. You look flustered. Your face is red. Progesterone is a very warming hormone. And as we move into that next phase and progesterone continues to rise, we can see all sorts of symptoms that come with that, or lack of it can cause a lot of symptoms as well. So I say to patients, we can scaffold, knowing that, say, I've got to nail a big presentation the day before my period, but that's not my best day, that I can do the least amount possible, but just focus on the one task, rather than multitask a whole lot better. So if I know that, then I can be kinder to myself, I can support my body better, and I can also still nail the presentation. It just means that I don't go and schedule a whole heap of podcasts on that day, and I wouldn't go and do the same things I do on that phase necessarily as what I do in my ovulation or pre-ovulation window.
So is that how you would explain cycle scaffolding, or is there any more details to that?
Oh, no, absolutely. So again, it depends on your signs and symptoms, right? So if you know that you are the person, you're really in that lead up to the period, you're tired, you can have maybe you get headaches at that time. Like, these are very common symptoms, and we'll talk about the common. There's all sorts of weird and wonderful symptoms, but the most common thing that I will see for women is that their progesterone levels drop off too early. And with that comes a whole lot of symptoms. You might not sleep really well. Progesterone is really important for sleep. You might experience night sweats. You might find that you're a little bit moody. Moody is a very common thing that we feel in that lead up to the period. And we've got to work out why. Why is our progesterone doing this, as a common example? And progesterone will be low. It's never high, never ever is. But I don't know about you guys. If you've ever seen high progesterone, let me know, because I'm still looking for that
rare.
person.
Very rare.
But not a lot. And it's usually due to like a fibroid or,
Yeah, right. I still have never seen it. I've really never seen it. But I will typically say to patients, all right, let's use the symptoms as clues. If you are experiencing low progesterone, we in the West say to ourselves, oh, low progesterone. All right, well, let's just supplement things to support progesterone, or we give you progesterone, bioidentical, or however you choose to administer that. My brain says, and this is holistic medicine and looking at functional medicine, will say, well, hang on, why is the progesterone low? And progesterone's typically low for the layperson. Let's just say we're talking generally here, from one of two reasons. Either estrogen's low, therefore progesterone's low, or estrogen's high, therefore progesterone's low, as a coping mechanism. So when there's too much estrogen, our body's smart. It pulls the handbrake on progesterone, and that can be through a cascade of events, whether it's high stress or issues with gut absorption or whatever that might be. Bowels as well is another, if you're not eliminating properly. So in the presence of high estrogen, we are experiencing low progesterone, and therefore we're getting these symptoms. And how do you know if you've got high estrogen, low progesterone ratio? As using your cycle as your superpower, is generally you'll have heavier bleeding. So more estrogen, more lining, more bleeding. Then the opposite of that would be low estrogen. Low estrogen, we need estrogen to make other hormones. And so the cascade, or the knock-on effect of that, is low estrogen leading to low progesterone, because there's just not enough of everything. And how do you know? That would look more than likely like a lighter period, a lighter bleed. And so there's just some really easy clues that you can use to start to support your estrogen better, whether or not you need to regulate and clear it better to help to basically bring it down, or do you need to support estrogen better to bring it to a better level so that progesterone's happy? And I think this is where patients don't use their clues of their cycle, where we just go straight and go, oh, well, clearly I've got these PMS symptoms, and you guys are saying to me, well, that can mostly be related to progesterone. And we're not looking at the why. We're not looking at all the other clues that the cycle's giving us. We're just jumping the gun and treating the symptom rather than the reason that it's there. So with that in mind, what do? First of all, look at the reason, but then we can start to implement ways and means to support our body better through the whole cycle, so that by the time you get to the end of it, your progesterone levels are happier. And the basics, I would say, we know that we need to eat better, or at least we need nutrition is really important. We know we need to sleep. We know we need to move. We know we need to look after our bodies in a way to support our hormones. Where I think we all fall short is we do not consider the impact that stress is having on our bodies on a day-to-day basis. And we've accepted stress as being a given. We've accepted it as something that's very normal. Mm-hmm. And we also have accepted potentially that if I'm not stressed, I'm not going to get my job done. And so we've literally accepted that this is my lot now. I have to be stressed to get the work done. And again, stress to me is the biggest factor that is affecting our hormones. Stress shows up in many ways. It's not just being busy or overextended. It's, what are your hormones doing? Are you detoxifying properly? Are you metabolizing them? Like, are you going to the toilet regularly to clear them? There's so many reasons, so many stresses that are related to that. But it's the one thing that I think we discount. When we look at our bodies and the way that they work, we discount the impact that has. And we can look at it and say, it can't be that easy. Can it really be that easy that it's just my stress levels that are really impacting my cycle? But again, stress and cortisol, the stress hormone, is another thing that will come along and absolutely impact progesterone by the nature of how cortisol bosses everything around. Cortisol comes along to save you, but we use it to get a job done. Mm-hmm. We use it because we've got a deadline, or we are overextended, or maybe we're multitasking in a period of our cycle where we're not supposed to be multitasking, like in the lead up or during the period. So, I know it's difficult to cover off everything in a really short window, and I don't want to confuse people, but I really think using your period to work out what is your body telling you, or lack of period. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Because there's typically reasons why we're not getting a period as well. And using that as a clue, not looking at it and not looking at your symptoms as, I hate my body, this is just my lot now.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about cycling women. So let's get in a little bit with birth control and women who aren't cycling anymore.
Yeah, I think, I'm sure a lot of your audience, you've educated them to understand that whilst we're on the pill flatlines our hormones. That I never forget when I heard somebody use the terminology of ovarian castration or flat, really stopping, really coming along. And I know that that's really, it's a severe term, I guess, but you're shutting down the function of your ovaries, and the production of hormones. And you're not just shutting down one production of one. And as we've just briefly discussed, you need one to make the next. You can't go on and make, especially progesterone, without estrogen or other hormones as well. It's very important that you have that balance there. And so I think understanding first and foremost that it's one thing to take the pill as a contraception, and you've done that based on what's best for you. You've made some decisions. Hopefully you've educated yourself into what that means. I think again, where we fall short, we don't look at, what does this mean if I take this drug, and how is it going to impact me? And so it's one choice to use it for contraception, but we use birth control, and especially the oral contraceptive pill, from everything to anxiety to PMS to ovulation pain, mood swings. Missing periods is my personal favorite because it doesn't actually give you a true period. It just helps you to have a 28-day, calendar that you can, I guess, at any point in time know where you're at, but you're not cycling at that time. So you're not getting the ebbs and flows that we spoke about of those phases where estrogen peaks as we move into ovulation. You get various hormones that surge, luteinizing hormones specifically. And then the downside of that, well, not downside, but the other side of that is, progesterone really kicks in, and we feel various things as a result of that. So if you're on the pill and you're not getting these ebbs and flows, that can be problematic for people. But the one thing that I'm really passionate when it comes to the pill and talking about is that I do a lot of education with young women nowadays, because this is, I think, how we change the face of women's health moving forward. And a lot of mothers will panic and put their daughters on the pill at quite a young age for these reasons that we see, mostly missing or irregular periods. And
or acne.
At around the age of, pardon?
Or acne.
Yeah.
Definitely. Or acne. Yeah. And I think, as a teenager, it could be kind of cool. Like everyone else is on it. I want to be on it too. And mum panics because we go through a phase around the age of 16 where our body it can mimic something that looks a little bit like polycystic ovarian syndrome, where we'll gain weight, we'll get acne, our periods will be a little bit irregular, and we get a bit moody. This is a really normal phase, but it's often the time we panic as parents because of these symptoms that we're seeing. And so typically we take our daughter to the GP or the general practitioner, family doctor, and this is commonly when the pill is prescribed. And so this is a slippery slope because your hormones as a woman don't really mature until around the age of 21. And so if we are then essentially flatlining our hormones at the age of 16, we aren't allowing the body to sexually mature when it comes to our sex hormones. And this is a big problem. If you're going on the pill when you're 16 and you decide to come off 30 years of age, you're sexually mature as your 16-year-old self. And this is why we see a lot of problems with women, and especially in my clinical practice, I see a lot of fertility. And I had an epiphany one day. I'm like, we need to fix this before it's broken. We need to educate the 16-year-old and the mother of the 16-year-old so we're not making these choices that have lifelong impact. The research seems to show when it comes to the oral contraceptive pill that the longer that you can take to use it, so the older you are to actually utilize birth control, the less impact it seems to have on our hormones. And so what if, knowing this information, we could encourage our daughters to wait, to understand and learn your cycle, to watch the phases, to be empowered with that gift of cycle awareness. And then perhaps maybe as you get older, that might be a choice. But also, once you understand your cycle, it's a no-brainer. It's not that hard. You have several days of the cycle where you're fertile. And truly, I am perplexed when I hear people say, I just don't trust myself. I'm like, if you can't trust yourself, who can you trust? So using, that's a huge conversation that I've tried to fit into a few minutes. But I think it's really important for mothers to understand the long-term implications of not looking at the reason, A, not panicking, and B, looking at the reasons why our daughters might be experiencing whatever signs and symptoms they might be, whether they're irregular periods or acne or pain or heavy bleeding, and the most common thing I see for teenagers, and actually exploring what that is and treating the reason it's happening. And usually it's not that hard to treat. It's really not. But also, the other thing I want to say to that is that as a mother, you're a blueprint of, your daughter. And so if you have known issues, there's a likely chance that if you don't encourage the body to work in its best capacity, that your daughter will probably follow that same path. Now, just because you're genetically predisposed doesn't mean that has to happen. And using that body wisdom and education as knowing what my body does to be able to support my daughter so that doesn't have to present and she doesn't have to follow the same path, I think that's a game changer. That is actually, again, how we change the face of women's health. So, again, it comes back to using a cycle as a superpower and really being able to understand those phases and those ebbs and flows as just body awareness and body wisdom and knowing that. And no one else is going to know that for you. You might be told you're hormonal. Someone might make you aware, but that's the only thing that they're going to know. They're not going to know unless you're curled up on the couch in excruciating pain each and every month. They might know that. And again, a sure sign that we need to go and explore what's actually happening. But our bodies are always talking to us.
They really are, aren't they?
Yeah. And we see in our practice girls in their 20s, early 20s, who have, hormones in the postmenopausal range.
Yes.
And
they're all on
birth
fascinating.
control.
Yeah. So fascinating. They are on or they were on?
They are or they were.
Yeah. Again, just speaking to this stress piece, and I'll speak about a patient just this week. She's menopausal or perimenopausal, and perimenopause, let's just put that out there, is around the age of 35. Women hear that and think, oh my gosh, I'm going into menopause. You're like, no, you've probably got 20 years of this, so don't panic. Yeah. But again, we don't talk about the ebbs and flows and the phases within phases. I think once we have children or we kind of get to that age of around 35, we just lump the next 25 years into 25 years or 20 years or whatever it is for us. But we still keep on going through phases within that time. And really important for women to understand their periods will change. Generally, they get a bit lighter, which is not for everybody, but generally they get lighter. which is nice. It's nice to have a lighter period. And then what we tend to find is they will start to get heavier before they get more sporadic. And then hopefully they start to disappear. Really, I don't know about you, but I don't really want my period forever. It'd be nice to not have to think about it. But I had a woman this week, and she had her just FSH and LH tested, which we use to indicate, one of the indicators of elevated FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone, is an indicator that we use to look at how close a woman is to menopause. Right. And in January, she was showing that she was menopausal or postmenopausal, and had been through a really stressful period, had some issues with the family, a cancer diagnosis, and was supporting a partner through treatment for that. And then I asked her again, just get a blood draw done. And blood draws aren't my favorite, but sometimes they're a great place to start. And she did that for me. And she said to me, when my doctor read my blood test to me, he said, you're not menopausal anymore. You've got flipped back into perimenopause. And I said, well, of course you're not, because you were going through a really stressful phase, and that's your body's way of protecting you. Your body's like, I can't do all the things today. I can't. I'm going to take a few things offline, and let's let the stress hormones come in and pull rank and help to protect you to get the job done. And then when everything kind of passes, then we'll get back online again. And so I said to her, yeah, of course, that's what's happened here. And she was fascinated. But again, it just drives that piece home, that stress is a huge impact on your body, enough that it can actually stop you from ovulating. It can absolutely pull your hormones offline, because when it comes to the pecking order, your sex hormones, truly, you don't need them to survive, and your body's not silly. It knows that. So, and with that comes a whole lot of symptoms. Don't get me wrong. She had horrible menopausal symptoms, and now is not experiencing any at all. And, menopause doesn't have to be this awful time. We've definitely medicalized every phase. Actually, we've made everything medical. Again, coming back to this awareness, if we can just tap into that, we can pull so much wisdom from that.
How can we use our environment to mimic cycle syncing?
I love this. There's so many ways that we can use our environment, and we can become a bit woo with this. It's pretty funny. But in a perfect world, again, we're cyclic beings, and often women will work out that they're cycling within our environmental rhythm as well, which is a 28-day lunar cycle. So often women will find that they'll bleed with the new moon, which is like a new beginning, and they'll ovulate with a full moon. Often it can be the other way around as well. So you might be bleeding on a full moon and ovulating on a new moon, but it very much does demonstrate that we are, there's cycles within cycles within cycles, and we are absolutely a product of our environment. For women who aren't experiencing a cycle, I often get them to mimic the lunar cycle to start to find that flow or that rhythm. It's actually how we are designed to be influenced. And in doing this, there's a few ways you can do this, but I get women often to leave their bedroom blinds open so that they can get the light that's coming in. What that does is it actually, when we're asleep, our bodies, especially through our eyelids, are receptive to that light through the circadian rhythm, and we will start to the light of the moon at nighttime obviously becomes much brighter during the full moon, and then obviously then wanes out to become less bright. And so this alone can really help our body to fall into a rhythm based on the amount of light that is shining during the night. So that's fascinating. But maybe you don't have a window that you can do that with. I get women to use a lamp that they move further and closer away that mimics what the moon would do, just to be able to hit the retina in the same way and to instigate that same response to start to cycle. And this is particularly also useful, if you don't have a cycle, you just start on a new moon. And obviously start with less light on a new moon. And then as you move into the 14th day, each day move it further away and then further back closer again throughout those 28 days. But this can be really useful for women that don't have or don't seem to have a regular cycle, and that some, it can be a bit hit and miss, sometimes 24 days, sometimes 32 days, and they're trying to conceive, or they're really trying to monitor their cycle and get the best out of it. So that's one way we can definitely have an impact on our cycles, but also just general environment can absolutely impact our hormones by way of endocrine disruptors in our body products, in our shampoos, in our cleaning, products, in our dishwashing liquid, chemicals in these products. And this is not news to us now, but I still think we discount how much that can have an impact on our hormones and either take them offline or really impact those estrogen levels in terms of elevating, as we spoke about before, which can then be problematic for women seeing not only symptoms in the lead up to the period, but for some women, it completely takes things offline. So looking at environment being also, what are we putting out? What are we exposing our body to? Mm-hmm. This can extend, everyone's different. It can extend to, and you guys would, probably even talk better to this than I would, but mold in the house, even, new painted walls, carpets. People can be really sensitive to these things, and it can again be enough. And it's an individual thing. I swear my mum has not been the same since they've moved into their new house, which would have had, I don't know the exact retardants and chemicals in carpets and paints and whatever. And even now you can get low tox paints, but we had our bedroom painted not long ago, and apparently the paints were low tox. I couldn't sleep in there. I'm like, I cannot sleep in that room. Like, wow. So, these things definitely influence us, but also environment can extend to relationships, toxic environment, from an emotional perspective, a job that you hate. So often patients will say to me, I just need you to get me pregnant so I can leave my job. And I'll be like, honey, you're not going to get pregnant until you do leave your job because you hate your job. And again, that impact it's having on that stress hormone to sex hormone ratio is it's a coping mechanism. It's protecting you from that happening. And so I think it's important to consider our environment, that is everything around us. And we're like, that experiment that you did in high school where you filled a petri dish with bacteria and you sat one on the windowsill and you put one in the incubator, and what came out were two different things because you changed the environment. We are like that as humans. We will respond to the environment, whether it's external stress, whether it's mental stress or internal stress or environmental stress, as in toxins. We will always be responsive to that, and our body's always trying to do the best it can to make things work. So it is important. You're right. It's a big conversation to have, to consider what's going on around you, not just inside you.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us about your hormone worksheet? Because we're going to put that in the links in the show.
Oh, yeah. I love this. So if you're sitting here and you're like, I know I'm hormonal, but I just don't know where to start. I have mood swings. I have ovulation pain. I never used to have it. Whatever your symptoms might be, the hormone worksheet was just, it's a guide that's set up to help you become more curious, because we're not going to get all the answers from an online quiz. We're not. But what an online quiz helps us do is become more curious and look at the potential of what maybe is going on for me. So the hormone worksheet is the most common hormone imbalances that we see in clinic. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those, I do laugh about it because it's one of the most simple things I've ever created, yet people say it's a game changer because it's enough for them to go, oh, maybe it is my testosterone. Maybe I do need to go and do something about it. And so, like I said, it won't give you every answer under the sun, but it'll definitely give you clues as to what to do next. And I think that's really important when it comes to addressing our health and our hormones. It's what you do next that actually counts most. It's not just sitting there hoping that tomorrow will be better. So we go through the most common, like I said, and we've talked about estrogen excess and estrogen deficiency, but we go through testosterone excess or elevated androgens that are often common with PCOS and insulin resistance. We talk about low testosterone. So there's lots of various hormone imbalances that we talk about, and it allows you to profile your symptoms to work out which one might be likely for you. And then you can go down that rabbit hole in terms of starting to do various things within your world to start to influence your hormones so that you can experience more balanced hormones in general.
Yeah. And where can listeners find you?
Yeah, so I'm Nat Kringoudis everywhere. On natkringoudis.com, Nat Kringoudis on Instagram. I love hanging out on Instagram. I love interacting with people. I love answering your questions. I
love your videos. They start off with music. I just love it. And you've always picked the best
hit and
songs.
miss, the music. The music's always a bit hit and miss because Facebook and Instagram like to sometimes ban various tunes that I play, and I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. But you know what? Fine.
It's fine.
We'll sort it out. I saw something really funny on Instagram the other day, and it was like, if you do ever want to make a home video that's a bit questionable, just make sure you put Disney behind it, and the Disney lawyers will come in and make sure it gets removed from the internet.
True. Oh my gosh, it's so true.
I know.
But I think we overcomplicate this stuff. You know, we can go down and we can get really deep into this. And my hope really is that we have these simple conversations that are at the surface to allow you to be more curious. I think you know your signs and symptoms more than anyone else. And so my biggest hope is that you do have this curiosity now that you can go away and go, oh, actually, I do have the symptoms at the same time every month. What does that mean for me? And how can I actually start to treat that? But symptoms aren't a given as a woman. You don't have to have them. They're common, but they're not normal, and we don't have to accept them as our lot.
That's such a great message. I love that.
Is. Me too. That's good.
So, well, thank you, Nat, for coming on. You were amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. You ladies are just ready for bed now. It's just like you can just roll on through the door behind you and off you go.
And you're just getting started in your day.
I know. I just, like I said at the beginning, my daughter turned 13 today, so I'll go home, and it's also Greek Easter. So the house is full of food we wouldn't normally have. Yeah. And I feel like that just
enjoy it, girlfriend.
I know. Right? Only that's, we this is the thing also. We can't beat ourselves up. We're just like, I'm going to enjoy the crap out of it. I'm going to move on. Tomorrow's a new day. So that's what I'm going with today.
That's right. That's
awesome. Definitely. All right. Now, well, thank you so much. And everybody, don't forget to leave a review. When we have reviews, it gets us better guests for you guys, and it gets more people to see the podcast and listen to the podcast and to learn more about this stuff. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And we really appreciate you guys listening to our episodes. And thank you so much, Nat, for joining us.
Yes, thank you again for having me.
Yes, it was so nice meeting you.
Everyone.